I may have certain impressions about some startup founders and about some startups in general with like their model or what they're trying to do. But I really encourage my team to kind of challenge that. Like
Sure.
give me a different perspective if you feel like otherwise, because when we're screening for startups to work with, of course, while we do want to support everyone, we need this imaginary image of you kind of like with your arms intertwined, going all at the same time in the event. And if you're not yet humbled, then I think you're still at the very early stages of your journey, because
Hey, I'm Al, and this is the Paglalayag podcast. I'm using this podcast to showcase what's going on around me in the hardware and cleantech sectors dito sa Philippines. With guests from across the startup, research, investment, and enabler ecosystems, Paglalayag focuses on the stories and inspirations that motivate us to start up in hardware and press on down this arduous path of steering our economy away from the looming climate catastrophe that makes itself increasingly felt in our lives each passing year. I hope you'll find this cast of characters as impressive and inspiring as I do. Also, if you've been listening to these podcasts and want to let me know what you think, there's a survey form available at paglalayag.net-podcast. You can also reach out by email at pal@paglalayag.net. I'd love to hear from you. Sige, tuloy-tuloy lang. Let's jump in. Okay, so welcome everybody to Paglalayag. I'm Al, and today I'm joined with one of the OGs of the startup enabling ecosystem, with Brenda, from who's right now serving as the country director of New Energy Nexus, and she's been doing this for more than 10 years at this point. So, Brenda, thanks for joining me today.
thank you for the invite, Alan. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So, like, as somebody who is very early into the Philippine startup scene, why don't you start out by just telling us a little bit about how you found your way into Ideaspace and this whole sort of scene and movement back when it was just really getting started?
Sure. My bachelor's degree was in entrepreneurship, but I feel like, when I was about to graduate, with all the things I was learning and being exposed to, I felt like I was not cut out to be an entrepreneur. I feel like I have, the skills are good, but I felt like I cannot take that much risks to be an actual entrepreneur after graduating. So I knew that I need to find a job of some sort, right? Um I think it was just a bunch of like coincidental things. There was a conference that I attended when I was in college where the Idea Space executive director, Miss Diane Eustaquio, was a judge, I think, or a mentor. She was speaking there, and that's when I first learned about Ideaspace. And I was like, okay, this sounds cool. It's like incubation thing. I mean, 2014, no one knows what that is. But it seemed like something cool. Like, you teach startups or whatnot, or like new entrepreneurs. I felt like it's aligned with my course back then. So okay, let's try. So I first joined Ideaspace right after graduating. Of course, I wasn't doing accelerator things. I was an assistant, I was supporting their events. Like if they organize a learning session, someone needs to order food and reserve the venue and make sure that people have parking spaces. So that was like what I was doing. It was very, very much in logistics. And then it kind of evolved into helping startups with their incorporation and registering their businesses. And that's kind of where I really got to understand like the complexities of setting up a business. And as they go through that process, you get to understand what they do better when they sit down with the lawyers and try to explain, what they're trying to do and look at the different complexities of their business models. That's kind of like where I got a better appreciation of it. And then I guess as time went by, I've kind of gotten more adept with how to design programs that will best support startups, right? So we did a lot of improvements within Ideaspace's program. And then kind of on my fifth year, there was an opportunity, right? So New Energy Nexus, who I did not hear of any and I have no idea who they were. They were looking for a program manager for because they have this grant from GIZ and they needed to operate in the Philippines. So they needed someone with accelerator experience and energy experience to to operate like the Philippines program, right? I'm like, I'm good with the accelerator, good with the startups, energy zero. Like, because all of the startups we supported in Ideaspace were tech.
Yeah.
The
What
only
were some companies that like you remember that were like kind of stand out in your memory from
I
those
think
earlier years?
every year there would be standouts, right? For example, cohort 4 that was 2016 was invested because that was such a standout because I was so immersed in their validation process and I've witnessed how it has evolved so much from the time that they entered the Ideaspace competition to where it is now. Front Learners, which is an edtech startup in 2015, which I've also seen evolved from what they applied into Ideaspace to where they are now. Of course, 2014, What's Smart? That's where I met Ralph, who
Right.
I work with. Right. So,
So you had an energy guy right from there.
yes. And Ralph's team was my only reference of what an energy startup was because moving forward, there wasn't a lot of energy startups. And my husband might call me out for this. It's also a standout in 2015. My husband was then a startup founder, and so that's where I met him when they entered
Ah,
Idea Space. in the
what were they doing?
They were doing retrofitting electric tricycles actually. Their name was then was Just Go. So they entered in 2015, but it didn't work out because also the
Just
fact,
Go. That was Evan and Alan, right?
yes, I married to Evan.
Really? Oh, I had no idea. Okay.
And it's a small world.
Yeah, yeah. Crazy. Yeah, that's hilarious. I had no idea. Okay.
So yeah, but I think it's really being very much involved in the journey of these startups that also helped me really appreciate um how an incubator accelerator can be of support to them, right? So it's really beyond creating these like really nice sounding programs with like really these like technical sounding mentorship and like sessions and workshops, but I think it's through seeing and hearing their stories of how much struggle they have with just getting into meetings with certain people, with just trying to understand how can they get more insights of their market, that really also gave me the that piece of knowledge that we also incorporated in our programs, right? So 2019 there was like a hiring for New Energy Nexus. When I applied, I told them I have like a good amount of experience in acceleration, really nothing on energy. So you've had to take me for that. And I know that some other people who applied for the job had extensive energy experience, but nothing on acceleration. So I was
Mm,
like, you have to choose. Can't get both, unfortunately. So
yeah.
that was it. I think it was my first few months was really a struggle because I don't really understand anything about energy. It's like when people start talking about like what size is the system? Is it like 10 megawatts? I'm like, is that big? Is that good? Is that impressive? I don't know.
Right, right.
Those things. And then it was such a niche. It was like when some of the people in the innovation community learned that I was in this space, they were like, "Oh, that's cool. Can you speak at our event? Speak about like energy and climate." And I'm like, still don't understand all these
Right.
things, but sure, I'll speak. So Ralph
But
was
I think solar offers interesting, like the fact that solar scales so small and so big. It offers so many new niche ways to do business and things like that.
exactly,
That we're not like energy has traditionally been gigawatt coal power plants or gas fired plants that like you're talking hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to put these things up, and you got mines and everything. Whereas like startups have always like the startup game is about finding stuff that you can get up for not that much and then grow it really fast and get it out into a market and provide these new kinds of services that couldn't before. And
yeah,
solar especially has got that like ability to scale up and scale down like other technologies don't. So it's somehow an opportunity that's coming along with this new tech.
exactly. So there's so much potential. There's a lot of opportunities, but the pipeline is not there, unfortunately, right? Like our first few years, it would be like the hackathons or the ideation workshops would be the same kinds of ideas, which gives you insight that not many people or not a lot, especially in our schools, our engineering students are very well versed or aware of the complexities of the energy landscape enough for them to innovate beyond solar powered solar powered something. So there will be like solar powered dryer, solar powered ice machine, solar powered alcohol dispenser, solar powered something, right? And to innovate beyond that means you need to really understand the flow of energy. How does the energy market work? How does how do these like off-grid communities struggle with energy access and innovative ways to do that? So that's I mean that's I guess something that is quite challenging at this point, because when we do our global like tally like lists of startups, you would see countries with very advanced energy related innovations, and then of course for us as a developing market, it's pretty much the same kinds of like solar powered something. Well, we're still in that space, but I don't know, I think it's also still there's still a lot to be hopeful for, also just because as solar prices go down, as solar becomes more mainstream in households, in commercial establishments, then people become more comfortable to innovate around it. So I think we're just at the cusp of a really interesting curve that we're about to see.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And like the rural communities, when you're talking about these other countries that have very advanced power industries, the rural communities aren't as like I mean, in Canada, rural communities are extremely isolated, but the sort of ability for alternative solutions to come in. I mean, in northern Canada, it's like generators and things like that, which is comparable to the islands around here. So in that way, it's there. It's similar, but somehow the communities here that are that rural also are substantially like have trouble going to school and things like that in the first place.
Mhm.
And so when you're going to those communities, you're speaking to people that are coming from a very different worldview, and so
Exactly.
when you're building the value propositions, you have to do it with that much more care and attention.
Exactly. And I think what's really interesting is I think the energy community, and we've done so much work in the energy transition, in fighting for climate as a climate vulnerable country, but we've never really looked into entrepreneurship as as a route, as a path. Maybe we consider social entrepreneurship, like when we enter or we go into a remote community, we give them a solar microgrid, and then we kind of teach them different livelihood
Mm.
opportunities. They can dry some of their produce and sell it, right? But not really, for example, coming in and let's say, providing them with access to energy, but also using that as an entrepreneurial opportunity for them. So many of the models that are in off-grid and many of the projects are actually like civil society or non-profit organizations coming in, providing the microgrid that's funded by an international aid or a bigger funder, grantor, and that's a dole out, or that's subsidized heavily, so people don't need to pay for that microgrid or their solar home systems. And then of course it's bundled with like livelihood opportunities, but not really looking into, when you enter and give them solar home systems, why don't we, aside from empower them with higher revenue or income opportunities, ask them to actually pay for those solutions, so that there's also more accountability for them to take care of the solar home system, for them to really feel proud that the energy and the power that they're using is something that they pay for, and that they really feel empowered because it's not something that they were given because they're in a, let's say, a low income community, they're off grid, but it's something that they pay for, something that they work for. I think
Yeah.
that's
Well,
something.
when a market solution really hits, nothing scales like that. Like
Exactly.
social entrepreneurship they're great projects, and they're beneficial. And I mean, not everything can be a market solution. And so sometimes, I mean, I know that, like, as a student, I didn't want to be really always chasing money, or I wasn't like naturally wanting to do entrepreneurship for the sake of making money or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people like that. And I know there's a lot of people that have this motivation to help people. And then trying to figure out how to make the financials work becomes a challenge for that. But when you actually do hit something that's just a good market value proposition, then that's the stuff that scales and gets all over the place on its own.
But the market validation piece, I do understand, is very challenging for many, which is
Mhm.
why I feel and I think for many, they don't even last long enough for them
Right.
to get to that product market fit. So it's understandable. Really, it's difficult. And that's why my argument is like entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And I guess that's like weird coming from an incubator and from an entrepreneur support organization, right? But it's not for everyone, but I think everyone should be given a chance to actually try it, right? Because it's difficult. I don't want to over romanticize it by saying that, oh, it's cool because you have like control of your time and then you have an opportunity to become really like profitable and wealthy, but it's also such a long journey for you to get there. And I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
not if you have like all these resources and all these connections that that you can easily tap into, but for, I know, for most people, it's something that you really need to crawl for. I'm not sure if the metaphor is coming through. Like, you really need to, crawl on all fours for you to
Yeah.
get there.
You
So
gotta eat
it's
a lot of dirt.
exactly like but it's some people are, cut for that. Some people like it. Some
Are
people
there
like
are
it
there
out.
any times that like at first glance you saw someone, you're like, I don't think these guys are like, have the heart for it, but then actually were really surprised
So I
by
would
them making it?
I would love that. I mean, I've been, but I think it's also, it has, I guess my judgment has improved over the years. Like when I was
Sure.
starting, I would feel like, this person is not really, won't probably make it until the end because of certain factors or certain things, right? Or certain characteristics that I'm seeing. But they end up surprising me, which is really good. So there are, and that's also what I tell my team when we're screening for startups to work with. Because of course, while we do want to support everyone, we need to also kind of make some decisions because our resources are limited.
Hmm.
So for us to be able to give good value to our startups, then we need to also make sure that we're at par with what the startups are expecting. So that's what I tell my team. I may have certain impressions about some startup founders, and about some startups in general with like their model or what they're trying to do. but I really encourage my team to kind of challenge that. Like,
Sure.
give me a different perspective if you feel like otherwise, because we all have biases anyway. So we need to set up a system that kind of helps us remove those biases and really be objective when we are looking at startups and their potential. But again, I think these things, these like criteria, these characteristics, I would really love for startups to prove us wrong. If in case they did not get into the program or did not win or whatnot, a certain competition, I would like to challenge those that you have to prove us wrong.
Mm.
You're really set to make it.
Yeah, sometimes just the act of challenging somebody can sort of light something in them and
Mm.
make them take it more seriously than they might have otherwise.
Yeah.
Like the old line of like talent, hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. You can sometimes like I was a big hockey in university, and like if I was like winning competitions and stuff,
Yeah.
and some humbling experiences are valuable
I
over
know.
when they come.
Yeah. It's good. And yeah, I think entrepreneurship is also a really humbling journey for many.
Oh yeah.
Uh, it's because you really need to, for lack of a better, I think, euphemism, strip down to everything that, that you think you know about the market, you think you know about your product, you think you know about what people like and what people will fund. I think through your course as an entrepreneur, you will be really humbled. And if you're not yet humbled, then I think you're still at the very early stages of your journey, because it will really get to you. It will really challenge you mentally, emotionally. And that's why I feel like entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Something that you need to be prepared for, at least. It's not, I mean, I admire those who just jump right into it, because also people say that there's really no way to prepare for it, just jump right in. So I do admire that. But also, I think at least preparing, for example, for some savings, some finances to get you afloat in the next few months. Also preparing yourself mentally. Especially when you're coming from a corporate job, from a very stable source of income. It's different. So, but I think it's exciting. I love the energy I get from our entrepreneurs. It's like they're a different breed. And I do understand when people from, let's say, New Energy Nexus Global would, like, when they visit the Philippines, they would like, or visit countries, they would say like, we want to meet entrepreneurs in your country, in your market, right? And I do understand, because there's really this energy that entrepreneurs give out. Um, and their passion is sometimes so contagious. You would really want to be around them.
Yeah, great. And so let's keep going with that. And how would you describe sort of the culture that you've experienced at Nexus, and how would you say it's different from Ideaspace or other groups that you've been in and around?
Hmm. I think, hmm, interestingly, generally, like, it's the same, because you're working with startups, you're also kind of encouraging a very entrepreneurial culture, which I felt in both Ideaspace and New Energy Nexus, right? Now, we cannot be a bureaucratic organization that doesn't value creativity and agility, because let's just go against everything we're trying to work for and we're trying to imbibe to our entrepreneurs. But I think one differentiator is because New Energy Nexus is well, both are nonprofit organizations, right? But New Energy Nexus is it's different in such a way that the focus really is on, at the end of the day, building a global, building the clean energy economy. So, and the path to do that is through supporting entrepreneurs. Whereas Ideaspace, it is a nonprofit, but also because it's supported by a tech conglomerate, the motivation, I'm not sure if the motivations are different, but also like the kinds of startups we support, they have to be really scalable. They have to be really also aligned with target priority areas of the funders. So there's that, I guess the type of entrepreneurs we support as well in Ideaspace are really looking to scale, more software. They're really more in a rush to scale because that's
Right.
what the model entails. In New Energy Nexus, we have, I guess, a little bit of room to support those that are at the very early stages that will probably take a few more years to scale. Those that are not, whose models are not really as scalable, but can contribute so much with greenhouse gas reductions and avoidance. And we're okay with that, right? One of our programs that I'm really, really proud of is the rooftop solar accelerator. And, these kinds of things we can't do in Ideaspace then because there's nothing scalable with supporting solar contractors.
Right.
The model in itself is not scalable to begin with. So there's no point in actually accelerating them or incubating them. But of course, in the case of New Energy Nexus, it's different because we see them as a very important catalyst in the energy transition, like especially in provinces or in areas where developers cannot come in because it's no longer economical for them, or maybe the household purchasing power is not too significant for the bigger boys to come in. That's where your last mile small solar contractor comes in. They can sell to their neighbors, they can sell to their communities, but they can't scale, they can't grow because, where do they get access to information or networks? If they go to Facebook, there's so much talk going on, there's so much noise, they don't even know where to go.
Right.
So that's kind of like our premise, and we've gotten good reviews. We're not just pulling them together to sell them solar products or like solar brands of inverters or whatnot. We're really, you know, speaking to them, telling them stories of, how do you find clients? How do you do networking? How do you do good proposals? And what are the terms you put in your proposal so you're protected? Very practical things. And, that's, I think, one big differentiation with working in an accelerator whose main mission and focus is, driving equity in the clean energy economy through entrepreneurship, and an accelerator that's really focused on just supporting tech startups, because that's, this the scales are different, but also the way that the programs are designed are also, you can really make a distinction.
Yeah, let's get further into that equity part with the tagline. I asked Ralph about this as well, but I'd like to hear you. How would you describe this 100% clean energy for 100% of the population? How would you describe that mission, sort of principle and practice?
I think it's really, just with the number, quite ambitious, but it also really highlights the value for inclusivity. And I feel like this is also rooted in New Energy Nexus's history, that for the longest time, they've been operating only in California since 2004 until maybe 2017, I think. So for many years, it has always, and I think the 100% for 100% was not yet the tagline then. But for many years, it has been that focus. And when they realized that, the energy transition is not concentrated in California, it will, really affect a majority of the population in the global south, especially we have this like graphic where there's this circle that covers like India, Indonesia, Philippines, and a little bit of Africa, I think. And then, the chart says there will be more people and more emissions in this small circle in the world map than the rest of the world. And I think that's also something that really inspired the organization to commit to operating in what we call the markets that matter. These are countries that really don't have enough energy access, really have really carbonized and centralized energy systems, are really climate vulnerable. So I think that's really the core of it. And it's also something that is very important to us with the indicators we track, with the objectives we set every year, that we look into the underrepresented communities, because for us to be able to stay true to 100% of the population, then we need to make sure that the underrepresented ones are counted so that we're really true to it, right? And I think 100% clean energy is a good blanket statement that whatever we need to get there, right? So we're not just doing renewable energy. If we need to do energy efficiency, sustainable transport, storage, IoT, climate agriculture, or whatnot, then we do that because that's what we need. We can't just say that the 100% is all just a good bunch of solar or a good bunch of
Right.
wind. So I think it's that culture wise and like values wise, it's really a high focus and attention to inclusivity, making sure that the underrepresented communities, areas, markets are really taken into account, and also whatever it takes to get there.
Cool. So regarding inclusivity, one thing that I've found interesting since I've been in the Philippines is the Philippine languages have some interesting little features that people outside of the Philippines would not be aware of. And during my grad, even though I was doing science, I chose anthropology for my arts electives.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, during one of my anthropology classes, I got introduced to this like sociolinguistics hypothesis called Sapir-Whorf. Have you ever heard of that one before? No? Okay. So they did a bunch of field research all over the world, and they were sort of studying how the languages that people use affects their perception of the world. And so, for example, they came across a tribe in Namibia that doesn't distinguish between green and blue. So then when they gave them cards and tried to ask them to sort them by color, they basically couldn't tell the difference between the green and blue cards.
Okay.
And apparently, I haven't tried to confirm this, but apparently something similar happens with Russians and pink and red. Yeah, and so there's like, that's just like a really simple example. It happened in terms of like counting, or like they talk about like how the Inuit in northern Canada have many different words for snow. All of this was sort of used to build this hypothesis around how people's worldview is affected by the language that they use. So specifically with Philippines, with Filipino languages, you've got tayo and kami. So could you help me set this up by sort of explaining to listeners the difference between these two words?
So generally, and I'm not a linguistics expert, by the way, just a disclaimer.
Of course.
But I guess in a way, because my dad was a writer, so I've had my fair share of like corrections with grammar for the longest time.
Right.
And other dialects are even more complex, which unfortunately I cannot speak about because I was born and raised here in Manila. So
Sure.
I only know Tagalog very well. And sometimes the way that it's being used reflects how communal you want to sound, right? Kami in a way is us, but not including you. So that's when you say kumain kami, we ate, you not included.
Yeah.
Right? But when you say tayo, and I'm not sure about the etymology for these, right? But you can check. But tayo is us, including you. So kumain tayo means let us all eat. So let us eat. So there are these like, I guess, pronouns, and I think this is an article I read a few, or maybe last month, because last month is language month. It's Buwan ng Wika, right?
Okay.
So there was a lot of like articles and news about like etymologies and like origins of some words. And I think what really distincts our language is also how there's so much regard for community. So many of our origins of our words are really rooted into the fact that we are kind of trying to include other people into the conversation, really trying to get them to do, certain things. And that just manifests into our, Filipino culture where we like, doing celebrations where we involve many people. Some of the more, I guess, emotion related words also relate to how people relate those emotions to other people. So that's, I think, a beauty of it. When I speak with foreigners, I just say that there's a simple hack with like Filipino words. It's the Filipino version of like prefix, suffix. So the unlapi and panlapi, that's the Tagalog for it, right? So like adding nag, mag, an at the start or end of any word, and then just kind of have the base word. Understand like what the base verbs are, and then you're good to go. So like kain, kumain, kumakain, right? And sometimes because of how we've been really influenced by the Western culture, many of our day-to-day language and words involve English words with Tagalog suffixes and prefixes, like mag-breakfast, nag-breakfast, right? Mag-dinner. So it's more common even in different scenarios, even in informal speak at households, that those are more commonly used.
The
The
English
English
gets mixed
word
in.
plus the prefixes and suffixes.
Yeah. And you said lapi before. That's like joining together, right?
Yes, so that's a suffix. So, unlapi, I think is the at the start, unahan. Panlapi, I think is at the end. So like the suffix that we use for
Cool.
each. I hope I did not bring shame to my Filipino teacher in elementary. Because I think Filipino is only taught.
What's the word? Nakakahiya? Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I hope I was not nakakahiya. Bringing embarrassment
Yeah,
to
yeah.
what I have learned. But it's fun. I think it's a really interesting, rich language to learn, especially like the really old, and in Batangas they have like really deep Tagalog words that I'm not even familiar with, because I think Southern Tagalog, so that's Southern and Northern Tagalog, right? So Region 3 and Region 4 are they're the ones who have been using Tagalog for the longest time. I think that's their
Mm.
really native language. So they would have words that are so like traditionally like old Tagalog that many generations are no longer familiar with.
Yeah, and in the case of the thing that kind of prompted my interest in talking to you about this, what I had tried to say was samahin po tayo, which was trying to invite people to join us, and
Yeah.
tayo being like us, where whoever's listening to it or whoever we're speaking to is included in it. But somehow that like creates a contradiction.
Yeah.
Because
Because
like
like
if they're
tayo
already part,
means
then
we're
why would they
already
need to
part of it.
join?
Yes.
And so what you said to me is samahin niyo po kami is like a good way to do it. If the person is over there and you're asking them to join you, and so they're over there and now they're joining. In my case, this was an invitation for like open source.
Yeah.
So it's already an open group, and the fruits of open source is open to anybody who wants it. It's available, even if only a few people will participate, but anybody can join. So the idea behind the word is that you're already part of the group, but you should join anyway. And so so what you suggested as the option is sama-sama po tayo. So yeah,
That
that's that.
sounds like that rolls off the tongue more smoothly.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
let's all go together. And I feel like there's like this imaginary image of you kind of like with your arms intertwined, going all at the same time in the event.
Right, right. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I don't know. For me, that's like somebody learning a language. Those sorts of things are interesting forms of like tricky language.
I
Yeah.
know, and I'm not. I guess I haven't really learned a lot of other foreign languages, but it's. I think these are just the small things that really make a difference when you are communicating with, I guess, with a bigger group, with how, I guess, how understandable it gets, and the tone kind of changes when you just tweak a little bit on the pronouns. The vibe kind of changes. So, it's interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, and so getting into like when you start speaking about pronouns, that's a place where the inclusivity conversation gets a little bit controversial. I don't know to what extent you see that in the news and that, but like guys like Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson grew up in the not very far from where I went to university. He's sort of from my area of Canada. And he became famous because the government was starting to basically tell government employees that they had to refer to people by the pronoun they wanted to use, and so that became like a criticism on the grounds of it's not for the government to be enforcing language that people use.
Mm,
um, and so like the vibe changes. Yeah, people appreciate on that personal level, but then when it becomes something that the government is enforcing, that becomes a very different sort of conversation or vibe, maybe you would say. Do you have you has that come up for you at all? Like, do you think that's a just that fear, that kind of fear is justified, or how do you what do you think? How would you say the Filipinos think about that kind of stuff?
oh, there's like so much, contradicting views about it, right? I think it's many of some many people in a certain generation don't feel as comfortable with that. But I also think it's because they're really not used to it and they feel like it's so complex and there's
Mm,
really no need to make things complex. While certain people of a certain generation also feel that it's just about time that we really open up to this complexity. So I think it's a little bit of there's room for both generations, or for all generations, that kind of like lean towards one argument versus the other, to just really try to be more empathic towards it. I do think personally it's quite complex, and I feel sometimes it's challenging to be adept with the different pronouns. But at the same time, I do acknowledge that there's really a need for us to really embrace this complexity. And people are evolving, the way that people are want to be treated are also changing. And I think as a support organization, as people working in the development space, it's something that's inevitable that we really need to acknowledge and recognize and adapt to. So at this point, we can resist or we can like voice out our disdain or our disagreement to it, that I don't think there needs to be an acknowledgement or an enforcement of what pronouns need to be used. But at some point, I think we would have to acknowledge the complexity of it. So, and I think that's the beauty, and I'm not sure if it really entails for countries to look into the languages, or their etymologies or their words for certain genders or pronouns or whatnots. Uh, but it's, I think, at least for Filipino, we're quite um neutral to it. Because I think the Filipino pronouns are really just singular or plural. But we don't necessarily have a distinction if the pronoun is male or female. So
right.
siya,
Yeah. Sha is
ikaw,
would refer to both,
right?
and
Siya
without
is
worrying
either
about.
niya, ikaw is
Yeah.
all. So it's just singular or plural.
Right.
So unless the person's pronouns would be they, them, then that would be sila. But at least for Filipino speak, doesn't really distinguish whether you're male, female, or trans or bisexual. siya, it's ikaw, it's niyo. It
Yeah.
doesn't distinguish, right? So I guess we're safer about that. But the other
Well,
language,
and the like before the Spanish showed up, there was quite a lot of sort of gender fluidity. Like there's like the stories of the Babaylan, like some of the fiercest warriors fighting against the Spanish when they first showed up were
yeah,
sort of mixed gender somehow,
right? So
which is kind of interesting.
it's interesting and I guess ironic that at some point like, we used to be a very I guess open community and our culture used to be very open and then we kind of set these structures and standards so for us to restrain and inhibit ourselves and then now we're trying to break those so I guess it's just the wheel of life trying to go back to what we actually initially had in the first place.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Moving forward, but I guess also appreciating where things came from and how like I mean a lot of pre-colonial history is not very well preserved, so a lot of it requires a certain amount of imagination. But more and more the scholars are finding these old documents and
Yeah,
translating them and stuff, so it's good.
yeah, that's true. We're seeing things more clearly now. I do appreciate it. The last few weeks I've been just binge watching like historical adaptations of movies. I don't know what inspired it. I think it's the whole language month theme
Okay,
last month.
I
But
didn't even hear about that. I feel I kind of wish I had known
yeah,
about it.
no, they're on YouTube, right? So these are like really good accounts and but some of them of course have been adapted for Filipino cinema. But it's good because it's also offering a different perspectives on some of our more celebrated heroes and really offering this perspective that they're really not, not what we've learned about them in history books. It's not, how what we've learned in history wasn't as perfect and as heroic and as patriotic as what it sounded like. There was a lot of like complexities, a lot of like political banter and whatnot. So I think it's good. It's we're trying to get to that point that we're really opening up our perspectives into the realities of what has happened. And I think that also helps us become more grounded as a nation, as a society at this point, helps us become more aware of the tendencies, the spectrum of like cultures and personalities that people may have. And I think it just I guess it's a good sign of
Yeah. So, like you've kind of mentioned this already, but I'm going to ask it again at the end here. Like, so having seen so many people go through these programs over the year, the majority of them failing, but some of them ultimately succeeding and sometimes very fabulously. Do you see yourself going into business? Like, I mean, I know you said at the beginning of your career, you didn't have the risk appetite for it. Do you see yourself maybe doing it sometime in the future?
not anytime soon, I think. So I also have this fear that I haven't experienced everything yet. So and maybe, I mean, I think I tell this to some of my friends or even to Ralph when we were speaking randomly. I feel like if I do enter entrepreneurship, it's probably something at least a little less risky. No? So maybe not a super innovative startup that I'm trying to find the business model to. Maybe something not as scalable, something comfortable, but will still give me that is it still that give me that thrill of being an entrepreneur. So I feel like I'm not saying no, but maybe not soon. But I think it's still on the table. Not sure yet because I really want to either open a bread store. So something that, that's simple. So I
Mhm.
like baking. Or even like an automotive shop. So
Okay.
I feel so fascinated with like transport services. So something that simple, I think. But let's see. Things might change in a few years and I start to become really risky, start to explore like a model or a startup that has not yet been invented or whatnot. So I'm not sure.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, for us, with what we're doing at Sunny, it's such a forward-looking thing with like such a market education task ahead of us that I often find myself going and like when I'm learning these things about sales and marketing, it's like I got to go and find something really simple to sell and get my reps in and practice on something that like people can get easily, and then you can just sell it and like build a sales funnel or whatever, and just do something that doesn't have that same amount of like effort just to get a sale behind it. So
Yeah.
like even if it is a technology product, there's certain kinds of products and services that are just a lot more simple to talk about and stuff. They don't have the same lead times and stuff, and you can find ways of doing business that don't require like going off and spending the next 10 years of your life and like the whole valley of despair and the soul searching that's involved
I
in that.
know, but some people like that. I think
Yeah.
you including, really, it's impressive when entrepreneurs like you really uh you know continue and just hold out the torch. Because there's no promise of how long that you need to hold the torch, right? There's really no, I don't think, I always felt that people would these entrepreneurs probably see the light at the end of the tunnel, that's what keeps them going. But as years go by and as I meet more people, I think you don't, I think the tunnel kind of keeps adjusting as well. The light keeps adjusting.
Or it looks like there's a light and then it goes really, really dark again,
I
and that can
know,
be soul
right?
shattering.
No. So that's crazy, but that's that's really the point of it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're doing it and you really are motivated to follow it through and like you've got the vision and the mission and it's strong enough to who you are and what you want to accomplish, then then that's what you really got to grapple with when it gets rough.
True. That's
So,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a signage that I saw. I think it was in the Startup PH group. It said, we did not go here because, we did not enter this because it is easy. We entered this because we thought it would be easy. I think that's the whole point of many entrepreneurs starting up. Like, you really did not know what you're signing up for, but I guess you're too deep here. So just
Yeah.
continue.
And social media always likes to share and promote the stuff that makes things look easy. And
That's true.
yeah,
So
so
you have
that
to be
kind of
really
image. Yeah,
wise to see what's really easy and what's not.
yeah. Cool. So why don't we get into the quotes from here? So there's not, I couldn't find too many quotes around inclusion. It's maybe a bit of a word that's entered our vocabulary a little bit more recently. But I picked two regarding diversity on two historical figures that were very much in competition with each other at the time in history when this came up.
Cool.
So that's Churchill and Gandhi. But they actually had something very similar to say about diversity in their time. And so Churchill said, diversity is the one true thing we all have in common. So celebrate it every day. And Gandhi, what he said is, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think about that?
Okay. One true thing. Okay. I feel like Churchill's quote is very straightforward. I'm trying to visualize what unity and diversity means. Because I feel like if we are to truly acknowledge and celebrate diversity, there's an acknowledgement that we will never be unified. Because I think that's the whole point of diversity. There will always be differences in how people think and how people understand things, how people treat things. So it's I feel like it's contradictory to try to unify diversity. Um, but I guess trying to get to it will also be, I guess that's what I feel like what Gandhi's saying, will also challenge us to really look into different ways that we can harmoniously work together. But then I feel like it's still contradictory Like, if we are to really acknowledge and celebrate diversity, then it's being comfortable with people being very different from each other. And there's, I feel there's also value to that. I think in our work, it's fair to assume that there will definitely be opportunities and areas where uh, there will be markets, there will be communities that will be just very challenging for us to support or challenging for us to provide value to. And that's okay. That we have to be comfortable with that. And we can't, it's always, like trying to be as inclusive as possible with acknowledging diversity, but also making sure that we don't try to eat up the market just because we can. So I think we have to make that distinction, even with the entrepreneurs, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I think that's something that us as people working in a space that also works with many different people is to also acknowledge that there will be differences in how people see or value you, see your value, see the benefits that you're providing, and you have to be comfortable with it. So there's really no, for me, I feel like there's really no achieving unity or unifying everyone, because it's kind of goes against the principle of diversity, if I'm understanding things correctly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you were to think back to the historical context for this one, like Gandhi really got inflamed and started on his journey in South Africa. But like people were kind of trying to kick him off the train or kick him to a different section of the train, is sort of like the inciting incident, as it's kind of known in history. And Churchill fought in South Africa during those times. I don't remember the name of the conflict or the war at that time, but he was like a war correspondent when he was younger. But then as he made his way into government and stuff, he ended up, he, like in this particular conflict, obviously Gandhi came out on the side of history, but Churchill is celebrated for his own fighting against, like, I guess what you say, maybe you call bigotry or anti-diversity in the form of like World War II. So they both sort of recognized it, but in that particular case, Churchill was on the side of the power structure or the government, and sort of the one who's trying to keep the order or maintain the status quo. And I remember there's like stories from that time when Gandhi was actually doing the Salt March, and journalists were going around and really paying close attention to him, because like they're thinking, like, if he's doing this, they must be feeding him like glucose or sugar packets in his water or something. They must, like, for him to actually be persisting through it. But like that never, like no journalist ever managed to kind of demonstrate that or anything. Like he actually literally did walk that whole distance with no food and do the whole hunger strike and stuff, which by the time it all played out, like it just spoke so loudly to everybody that was around at the time. And that's how the story played out. So I guess it depends on the conflict or the particular subject at hand. I appreciate what you're saying. Like what is unity? Like, I mean, it resulted in India getting their own self-governance in that case. So I guess that's a question of like our ability. Is he talking about Kami or Tayo when he's saying our?
That's true. I think our, when you actually translate this, can be both Kami, like just us, and also, something that also includes the object of who he is speaking with. And I think there's so much richness and inspiration from these events in history that we can really take inspiration from. I guess it's not as straightforward applicable to our work at this point. You can't just like find ambassadors to like walk for miles and try to advocate for energy entrepreneurship because of that, for that walk. But I mean, I think it's the value behind that. It's really the motivation and the passion that really we need to take into account and learn from, and be inspired from these people.
Definitely. So, is there anything coming up in Nexus that listeners might be interested in hearing about?
I think this year, one of our last events for the year would be a hackathon in November. If there's anyone interested to come up with ideas and innovations to solve our energy issues in the country, then it's definitely something for you to sign up for. It's 3 days, well, 2.5 days in November in celebration of the Philippine Startup Week. And yeah, if anyone is interested, you can follow our Facebook page at New Energy Nexus Philippines, because it's an exciting event. You get to meet so many people and try to put your ideas to the test with some experts. So it's a fun event.
Awesome. So I think I'm good on that. Are you good? Any closing thoughts?
No, I think I'm good. I think the
Great.
promotion of the event is a good.
Yeah, perfect. Hopefully some of you can come out for that. Anyone who's listening. So can people join that online as well? Would that option
No,
be?
it's in person. It will be in Manila, because we really want people to gather in one area, and that they can get to meet other people as well, form ideas with them. So it's in person.
Maybe we can run a satellite event out of Batangas City.
Yeah, or maybe we can actually do in Batangas. That would be fun.
Cool. Okay, well, let's sign out from there. Tuloy lang. And thanks a lot for joining me. Until next time.
Thank you.